Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So we have a lot to talk about on today's show. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, and that basically highlights your comment, and it allows me to, talk about it in the chat. And, so we greatly appreciate that. And, of course, for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this live broadcast, make sure to go to streamelements.com. Go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content for all of our podcasts on the GSMC Sports Network. So we have a lot to talk about on today's show. To start off the show, I wanted to go through the NFC North, talk about that division as a whole. I know we did the current standings yesterday, but I just wanted to go into more detail with some of those teams, and talk about them where they currently stand. After week 7. In the second part of the show, we'll go over the power rankings that were released this week. So I'll talk about that, give my thoughts on that. And then the third part of the show, we'll talk about the Giants quarterback situation. I'll go over that, give my thoughts on that as well. And then in the final part of the show, we'll go over the current stats leaders after week 7. So that's basically the rundown for today's show. So let's get right into the first part of the show, which is talking about the NFC North. So let's pull up the graphic here. So we're going to, take the Patreon down for a second. And we're going to talk about the NFC North. So right now, as it currently stands, you have the Lions at 5-2 on the season. The Vikings 3-4, Packers 2-4, Bears are 2-5. The main team I wanted to talk about was the Packers, because, listen, they got off to a decent start this year. They were 2-1, and listen, it took some time for them to get going in some of those games, but, they had a 2-1 record. And then since then, their offense has just been very bad. Against the Lions, they were awful. Against the Raiders, it was awful as well. And then most recently against the Broncos, it was awful. So, looking at them and some of the problems that they have, really the one thing you really got to look at is quarterback. Jordan Love has not looked good the last few weeks. He's throwing picks. I mean, basically, the last 2 games that the Packers have had, they've kind of ended the same way. It's Jordan Love throwing it up and it getting picked off to end the game. And, there's a lot of question marks now with him and whether or not he's the guy. I think it's still a little too soon to tell, but, people argue, well, he's been sitting on the bench for, 4 years. Got to see some results. And, he has regressed as the season has gone on. And the Packers have dealt with injuries. Obviously, David Bakhtiari is out for pretty much the whole season, their left tackle. Aaron Jones hasn't really played that much this year, although he did play the other day, and they really just didn't do anything. Of course, Christian Watson missed some games to start the year. So there's been a lot going on offensively for the Packers, but, Jordan Love has regressed. And, that's definitely something to be concerned about because, the Packers have had stability, over the course of, the last 20-plus years, only having 2 starting quarterbacks, between Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And now you're kind of in new territory because you got a guy that, is struggling. Now, if you look at, how Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers did their first seasons, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. So I still think it's a wait and see with Jordan Love, but right now it's not looking good. And listen, I said the Packers can maybe be a wild card team, with their defense, although their defense has not been playing up to par as well, which is a problem. Carlson missed his first kick the other day, and that was kind of the difference in the game, that kick. He makes that field goal, Packers end up winning that game instead, and it looks better at 3-3. But the Packers could very easily be 1-5, and I did mention this. I mean, if their only win that they pretty much, dominated from start to finish was the Bears game, and the Bears aren't good. So, you look at the Saints, I mean, they fell apart at the end. The Packers scored, 17 unanswered or whatever it was to win that game. And, if they lost that game, if Derek Carr doesn't get hurt, Saints probably win that game, and the Packers are 1-5, and they're in last place. And this is a big game coming up against the Vikings. The Vikings coming off of a huge win against the 49ers. So, it's a home game, but, the Packers, they got to get themselves right because, it's not looking good right now. But the Vikings, I mean, listen, they're a team that, believe it or not, is trending up. And especially after a win against the 49ers, who, myself included, everybody was talking about as the best team in the NFL. Well, the Vikings made them look silly. They really did. They put up over 450 yards of total offense on the Niners on their defense. Kirk Cousins passed for 378 yards. I mean, the Vikings surprised me. They really did. And also the offensive line too. I mean, that offensive line really held up against that front of the Niners. The fact that Kirk Cousins was not sacked at all in this game really is I don't even know what to say. But they got a shot, to make the playoffs with the wild card situation. It's it's going to be interesting to see, and they're doing this without Justin Jefferson. So if you get him back and the way Addison's been playing now, I mean, you got to like what the Vikings are doing. I mean, obviously, the running game is still a lot left to be desired there, but listen, they could be a team that sneaks in. And like I talked about yesterday, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to want to face them, with that high-powered offense. So, but, yeah, I mean, it's a big game coming up this weekend between the Vikings and the Packers. It really is. Because, for the Packers, they need to win this game. I think the Vikings right now, they could kind of afford the loss, although you don't really want to lose, of course, but for the Packers, it's kind of a must-win for them. But we'll see. The Bears, they play the Chargers on Sunday night. I kind of wish they flexed out of this game, but I guess not. So we're going to have to see Tyson Bagent against Justin Herbert. The Bears got a win. Deontay Foreman had 3 touchdowns in this game. Bagent did what he was supposed to do. But on Sunday night against the Chargers, who they're coming off of another loss, it's going to be a tough game for the Bears. So we'll see. And, the Lions, that loss against the Ravens, that wasn't good at all. It just, that game from start to finish, it was never in the Lions' favor at all. I mean, the Ravens dominated the Lions. Now, can the Vikings catch up to the Lions? I mean, yeah, it's possible. I mean, they got the, sorry, my dog's barking. They got the offense, to keep up with teams, but I don't know. I still look at the Lions as the favorite, and I think this was just a bad game for them, so I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, obviously these two teams haven't met yet. Actually, we'll look at the schedule right now. Let's take a quick peek at their schedule. Well, when's the first time they play each other. So the first time that they play each other is actually on Christmas Eve. And then they play different teams. The Lions, I'm looking at the Lions schedule. Lions play the Cowboys. And then they play each other week 18. So, listen, if the Vikings can keep pace with the Lions, I mean, who knows? Maybe the division comes down to those two teams last game of the regular season. I don't think that's going to happen. But, I mean, you never know. You never know. But, listen, you got to think about that just because of the win that the Vikings are coming off of. I mean, they beat the 49ers. So, I mean, they could beat anybody, right? You would think. So, but what I like I've been saying this week, I mean, this year's and on the shorts last night, I mean, that I posted. This is kind of one of those years where like anybody can be beat, really, at any given moment. Like, I mean, I really have no idea. I really have no idea after this week, you know, how to look at a lot of these teams. But all these teams are beatable. They are. So, I mean, the Vikings, yeah, they could beat the 49ers, but, you know, they could go on the road next week against the Packers and lose. Like, it's definitely possible, you know. But I still look at the Lions as the favorites. You know, I just, they are a better team right now. They just had a bad game on the road against a good Ravens team, the good Ravens. So, you know, I expect the Lions to bounce back. I mean, they got to get right game at home on Monday night against the Raiders. So I think that game they should win. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. You know, Vikings and Packers, they play each other. And then you got two of the NFC North teams are on prime time. You know, you got the Bears are going to be on Sunday night, and the Lions are going to be on Monday night. And we just had the Vikings on Monday night this past week. So, but, I mean, a team that I'm concerned, I mean, what you got to be concerned about with the Packers is their quarterback position. And also the other thing, too, is, I mean, Matt LaFleur is in question now, too. Because, listen, you had Aaron Rodgers, you know, 2 MVP years. You made it to 2 NFC championship games. You know, 2 MVP years with Aaron Rodgers. Last year was kind of a transition period because you had, you know, Devontae Adams leaving and going to play with the Raiders. Well, they traded him. You know, you had Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson stepping in, and, you know, there was some growing pains there, wide receiver, but they were able to figure it out. And then you had the home loss to the Lions when the Lions didn't have anything to play for and you missed the playoffs. So Matt LaFleur has been outcoached many times. He's won a lot of games, but, you know, when people talk about, like, you know, halftime adjustments and things like that, you know, that's where a lot of the criticism, you know, for him is found. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, listen, this is, you know, with Jordan Love, there's going to be some growing pains there. But, you know, how he started to how it's now, how he's been playing now, it hasn't been good. It just hasn't been good. So they got things they got to figure out there. You're hoping Aaron Jones gets healthier and healthier, and he gets to how he's supposed to be. You know, and I know Christian Watson, he got banged up in the game. I think towards the end against the Broncos. You know, that's a guy that just has dealt with injuries. You know, the last couple of years. So, yeah, it's Packer fans are in different territory right now. And you know, they got looking up at the Lions, the Vikings. I mean, they got a big win. So, you know, if it wasn't for that win against the Bears, you know, Packers could be in last place. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about the NFC North. I kind of wanted to just go over that, you know, because obviously I skimmed through some of the games on Monday doing the recaps because, you know, we were kind of strapped for time a little bit, but. You know, I just kind of wanted to, you know, go into more depth with how some of these teams did this past week. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to go over the power rankings that were released, and I will give my thoughts on that. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to go through the power rankings that were released this week. And I will give my thoughts on that. So let's kind of run through it. So starting at the bottom, the Panthers, 32. They're 0-6. I mean, yeah, there's no surprise there. This week we got Bryce Young against C.J. Stroud. So, we'll see what happens there. Two young quarterbacks going at it. Right now the Panthers are, at least at the moment, they were like a +3 home underdog when I looked on CBS. So, yeah, but they're 0-6 right now. I mean, listen, they got off to they were up to 14-0 against the Dolphins, and then, you're like, hey, maybe they are starting to figure it out. And then they got outscored 42-7 the rest of the way. So now they're coming off of a bye. So we'll see. Cardinals, they dropped 4 spots. They're now down to 31. Yeah, the wheels kind of fell off with them. Joshua Dobbs had another rushing touchdown in this game, but these last few games they have kind of been getting overmatched by their opponents. I mean, listen, they had their chances against Seattle. They didn't get blown out, but the Seahawks were the better team. We saw them get dominated by the Niners, the Bengals. So they're at 31. Giants actually went up a spot. They're now at 30. And we'll talk about them in the next segment. But, I have no complaints there. The defense has started to play better. It's for forcing turnovers, which you got to like. They got to Sam Howell last week. So, listen, you're playing against the Jets. Listen, the Jets have a very good defense. And that is going to be a problem for whoever's under center on Sunday. But, the Giants' defense has been playing well, too. And the Jets' offense, listen, they got a good running game, but, they could force Zach Wilson into some turnovers. So, they're at 30. 29 is the Bears. I mean, listen, they beat the Raiders, who were 3-3 at that point. But listen, Deontay Foreman scored 3 touchdowns. They forced turnovers in the game. And Tyson Bagent did what he was supposed to do. Now they're at 29, so they're 2-5. Patriots are 2-5. They're at 28. Yeah, I mean the Patriots, they deserve to jump a spot. That was a big win over the Bills. Mac Jones led that game-winning drive, and yeah, they now I don't want to declare if the Patriots are back or not, but that was definitely a big win. That was definitely a big win for them. So they jumped a spot. The Broncos jumped a spot with the win over the Packers. Honestly, I might put the Patriots over the Broncos because I think them beating the Bills was more impressive than the Broncos beating the Packers. So, but yeah, then we move on to 26. Titans are still at 26. They didn't play last week. They got a bye. Actually, Will Levis, he's actually going to start this game against the Falcons on Sunday, so he'll be making his debut because Ryan Tannehill is dealing with a high ankle sprain and he is out indefinitely. So, and the Titans are starting to sell off some pieces. Kevin Byard was traded to the Eagles. So, they're kind of in rebuild mode now. And we'll see what happens with Derrick Henry, some of these other guys on the team as well. The Commanders are at 25. They're 3-4 after the loss to the Giants. I don't really have complaints with that. I mean, Sam Howell has looked good at times this year. You got to respect the defense as well. I mean, they could have won this game against the Giants. They just really didn't fully take advantage of some of the Giants' mistakes in the game. But, yeah, they're at 25. Raiders are at 24. I mean, just a horrible loss against the Bears. I mean, I picked the Raiders because I'm like, hey, they're 3-3. The Bears are starting an undrafted quarterback, undrafted rookie at quarterback. And I like the Raiders' playmakers better than the Bears. And, Brian Hoyer was terrible. And, the Raiders, they just got destroyed in this game. Aiden O'Connell threw a touchdown pass. They had to put him in. So I think he should be, if Garoppolo doesn't play, that should be the guy moving forward as to who should start. That, should tell you all you need to know. But whatever. Then we go to 23. The Packers are at 23. Honestly, the Raiders should be ranked ahead of them because the Raiders beat them. The Packers offense has not looked good in recent weeks. Yeah, they're at 23. They went down 3 spots. The Chargers, they actually, on these, so I'm looking at like the ones on NFL.com. They have the Chargers dropping 8 spots. They're 2-4 now. They just lost to the Chiefs, obviously, by a couple of scores. Yeah, I can't really complain about that. I mean, Justin Herbert hasn't really played well the last couple of weeks. So, but yeah, I mean, 8 spots is crazy. They actually got the Colts ranked over the Chargers. I guess for now, I mean, they put up, 38 points on the Browns defense that, held the Niners to 17. Gardner Minshew, I mean, now with him being the starter going forward, it's kind of going to be like an up and down, kind of season for them. He's a very good backup quarterback. And, like the Colts are still going to win some games. They got a winnable game against the Saints on Sunday. But, yeah, right now they got them at 21. At 20, they got the Vikings. They jumped up 5 spots. And, I mean, as they should. I mean, they came off of a huge win against the Niners, a game that not a lot of people, had them winning. So, and listen, you get Justin Jefferson back, and Addison's playing well. I mean, listen, this team could definitely make the playoffs if, they continue to right the ship. And, again, they got a winnable game, very winnable game on Sunday against the Packers in Lambeau. It's going to be tough, but, I think the Vikings can definitely win that game. The Saints went down a spot. They're at 19. I honestly would put the Vikings ahead of the Saints. The Saints just have not looked good. They really haven't. I mean, they made things interesting towards the end against the Jags. They tied that game up. But, I mean, like, they didn't look good against the Texans. Something's off with them. Their offense is a problem, and it's going to be even worse now because with what's going on with Chris Olave. We'll just have to wait and see if they can figure it out. But, right now they're not looking good. Rams, they're at 18. They lost that tough game to the Steelers. A lot of people are talking about the officiating. And, yeah, I mean, that the main thing is obviously Kenny Pickett being short of the line of gain, and the Rams should have got the ball back, but that wasn't the case. Listen, I think this is another team that's going to be, in it for a wild card spot. They're kind of a middle-of-the-pack team, I would say. They're not like they were when they won the Super Bowl, of course, but, I think they're a team that, can make the playoffs, especially with Cooper Kupp coming back and Puka Nacua playing very well at receiver, being a nice number 2. And, of course, you got Matthew Stafford as well, so... and Aaron Donald, so and Sean McVay is the coach, of course. So you got to respect the team, obviously, but again, they're not as loaded as they were a couple of years ago. So yeah, they're kind of a middle of the pack team. Bucks went down 5 spots. They're at 17. I mean, it's expected. I mean, you lost to the Falcons. Desmond Ridder turned the ball over. And didn't throw any picks, and you still lost. Yeah, and even in the paragraph they have for him, the good vibes of the 3-1 Bucs start have fizzled. Yeah, they really have. And it's ever since I came out with that video saying, hey, are the Bucs legit? But yeah, Baker Mayfield, he was okay on Sunday, but threw an interception that was bad. And yeah, I mean, they should have put up more than 13 points on the Falcons, but they couldn't do that. Falcons jumped up 6 spots. They're a spot ahead of the Bucs. I mean, these are like middle of the pack teams. Everybody's talking about the Bijan Robinson situation and how he wasn't playing at all. He was dealing with a headache, and then he played towards the end of the game. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons get the win, and right now they lead the NFC South. So the Texans, they're at 15. I mean, listen, C.J. Stroud is playing very well this year. He's got a nice rapport with his young receivers. And they got a game against the Panthers that they could definitely win. They can get themselves to 4-3. I mean, they're still in play for the AFC South. You got to look at the Jags, though, as the favorites right now. But you got to like what they're doing. You got to like what they're doing, what they're building there. So, yeah, but they're at 15. Jets are at 14. Obviously they're coming off of a bye. They'll be playing the Giants this week, so that's big, for what's going on around here in the New York, New Jersey area. The Jets defense is why they're really in the position that they're in. I mean, they've done well against elite quarterbacks, or as Robert Saleh say, they've embarrassed them. Although he's walking back what he said about that, which, I mean, I could kind of understand, but everyone's talking about he should own it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're making a big deal out of it, but I mean, listen, what is it? 3 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. With all the quarterbacks combined, I mean, I think it's fine that you said that. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Although you did lose the game against the Chiefs, which they could have won, but but they're at 3-3, and they got a winnable game against the Giants. And you got the Steelers, who went up 6 spots, beating the Rams, which I again, not a lot of people expected them to do that, but they're 4-2. And, I mean, they're going to be a team that's fighting for the playoffs. They are. I mean, 4-2, they're, up there with the Ravens, at the top of the division, and they're also tied with the Browns. But, yeah, I mean, their defense, I mean, TJ Watt is probably the best defensive player in football. They got Deontay Johnson back, which was big. 2 rushing touchdowns from both of their running backs, and listen, they still probably got to get rid of Matt Canada, but, you got to like what the Steelers are doing. That was a big win for them. The Bengals, they actually still have them ranked over the Steelers, which I honestly really can't complain about. I think the Bengals still are looked at as probably the better team. I think it ultimately is going to come down to them and the Ravens for the division, and I talked about that this week. But they're at 12. Seahawks are at 11. They're 4-2. I mean, listen, Geno Smith continues to play well. They were without DK Metcalf this past week. And, I mean, they're 4-2. Again, another team that's going to be for a wild card spot. I mean, they are a game back of the Niners, or a half game back of the Niners. But, I think a wild card is probably going to be what they end up getting. This is a good team. Browns are 10. They got that win against the Colts, which, honestly, if Deshaun Watson plays that whole game, I think they probably lose that game because he just looked so bad before the injury. Because he was being evaluated for a concussion, and then he was cleared, and then they never brought him back into the game. But, yeah, that was a crazy game, 39-38. P.J. Walker finished the game. But, yeah, the Browns are in a good place right now, 4-2. But right now they don't look good with the quarterback situation because Deshaun Watson really has not played that well this year. The Bills are at 9. They dropped 2 spots. Yeah, I mean, they got to get things going on offense. That's really been their problem. So we'll see. Cowboys are at 8. They're coming off of a bye. They got that win over the Chargers. They play the Rams this week, which is going to be a tough game. But we'll see. Lions dropped all the way down to 7. So the Lions are 7, Jags 6. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd probably still put the Lions, in the well, I mean, they got the Ravens in the top 5. I mean, I don't think you could really argue with that after the kind of week they had. I'd probably put the Lions over the Jags at 6 and the Jags at 7. Jags have looked good the last couple of weeks, so they're really starting to get it going, which is, it's good to see that. But, yeah, the top 5 is you got the Dolphins at 5, Ravens at 4, Niners at 3, Eagles at 2, Chiefs at 1. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any complaints with that. The Niners haven't looked good the last 2 weeks. The Eagles, they got back on the right track. I think the Chiefs are the best team right now. So I don't really have any issues with that. I'd probably put the Lions still over the Jags, but it's debatable. So, but yeah, those are the power rankings for this week that were released. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on that. And with that, we are going to take our second break of the show. But once again, I want to remind you guys, when it comes to the Patreon, to tip or donate and getting your comments recognized, make sure to go to this link, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. It highlights your comments. I address it during the live broadcast, so that gets you recognized. So make sure to go do that. And then, of course, for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content for all of the sports podcasts here on the GSMC Sports Network. So with that, we're going to take our second break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to discuss the Giants quarterback situation going into Week 8. So stick around, And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to discuss the Giants' quarterback situation going into Week 8 against the Jets. So, right now it looks like Tyrod Taylor is going to start. And honestly, I think that should continue to be the way to go for the Giants, of course. Obviously, if Daniel Jones cannot play, that then it's definitely going to be Tyrod. But if Daniel Jones is healthy, the question is, do the Giants go back to him and start him? And they probably will. But I don't know. I feel like the way the Giants have been playing the last couple of weeks, because now they're starting to kind of get right a little bit. Now, this is still a lost season. I declared the season was over after Week 1 because that was going to tell me all I needed to know about what this team was going to do. I mean, there was a lot of off-season hype around the Giants. And, I had to see them play a game. And now I didn't watch the game, obviously, because I was at a wedding. But, obviously I kept track of what the score was, and it just got uglier and uglier. And I said, you know what, this season's over. This is going to be more of the same. And that was really the case. But you know what, the last 2 weeks, the Giants could have won the game against the Bills. I know everybody's going to complain about the flag, and I understand that. But you know what? You got to put up more than 9 points. And that blunder that they had at the end of the first half, that shouldn't have happened. So instead of going down the field to try to win the game with a touchdown, you could have been going down the field to try to kick the game-winning field goal. And you probably win that game, and instead you're 3-4, and you're in a much better position right now than you would have been. You'd be in a much better position right now than if things would have went right in that game. For me, I just don't think Daniel Jones is a guy that the Giants will win anything with. It's hard when he really hasn't been surrounded with a lot since he's entered the league, and I understand that. I get it, but I don't know. For me, I just don't really look at him as a guy that the Giants can win with. And what Tyrod Taylor has been able to do the last couple of weeks. Now, obviously, he hasn't lit up the stat sheet by any means, but he himself has not turned the ball over. He hasn't. The Giants turned the ball over twice in the game on Sunday against the Commanders, but it wasn't on Tyrod Taylor. It was on Sterling Shepard on a punt, and it was on Saquon Barkley. So, and Daniel Jones, he turned the ball over in pretty much every game that he played in. I don't think he had. I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if he had any turnovers against the Dolphins. I know he had one against. He had plenty against the Cowboys. The Cardinals, he threw a pick. The Seahawks, obviously, the bad pick six. It's not good. He hasn't been good. Tyrod Taylor has played turnover-free football, and the offenses look better. Now, I'm not saying Tyrod Taylor is the franchise quarterback moving forward. He's not. But, he's played, he's done what he's supposed to do. And the Giants actually were able to throw the ball deep. He connected with Hyatt. on a long pass. Waller had his first touchdown. He connected with Saquon Barkley for that. I think it was a 32-yard touchdown reception. So the Giants, they got things going on offense. Now, again, they always beat the Commanders, so you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt in some aspects. But the Giants have looked better these last couple of weeks, and on defense as well. For me, I think we'll see what happens. I was listening to the radio yesterday, and someone was saying Daniel Jones is probably done for the year, and I'm thinking, really? But I just wanted to show this though. So, well, not the Patreon, but obviously, yeah, with the Patreon, like I just talked about, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Click the link and go to patreon.com for the bonus coverage materials on there. But yeah, so what I wanted to look at is this, okay, and this is the splits of Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones without Saquon Barkley. Now, obviously, Daniel Jones has a losing record, so of course, both the record's kind of cut off. So overall, with Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones is 14, 22-1, and then without him, he's 8-14. So when you look at the rest of the stats here, so obviously, the passing yards are down. The completion percentage is down a little bit. The yards per game. The yards per game, there's a big difference. Okay, he's averaging over 200 yards with him, under 200 yards without him. He has the same amount of picks, a lot less touchdowns. The interceptions are up. Well, the interception percentage is up. And the passer rating is down. That just goes to show you also, Daniel Jones really needs a running game to help him out to be successful. Because you saw on against a very good defense, Kirk Cousins, with really no running game. They did run the ball a little bit better. Kirk Cousins was successful in the game without his running game. You see some of these elite quarterbacks without running games. Mahomes at times without a running game, although they have one this year. Aaron Rodgers without a running game. Listen, I'm kind of doing Daniel Jones a disservice by comparing him to those guys. But those guys, there have been quarterbacks that can be successful without a running game. Daniel Jones is not one of those guys. He needs a running game to be successful. So when you want to talk about who the most valuable player on the Giants is, well, I like to say that Graham Gano is the best player on the Giants just because he's the one that gives us the less headaches. Although he did miss a field goal on Sunday. Saquon Barkley is the most valuable player on the Giants. And that's something that's talked about a lot here. And it's true. Because, and the Giants have looked better the last couple of weeks. And who's back? Saquon Barkley. Now, listen, I'm not saying that, the Giants are going to go on. Again, the season's over still. But what's happened the last couple of weeks and how the Giants have looked without Daniel Jones, it's not good for him. It's not looking good. Listen, he had that one really good second half against the Cardinals. And outside of that, he's been bad this year. He's been bad. Now, you could look at the offensive line, the injury to Barkley, lack of weapons. I understand that. The defense has been bad. There's a lot of problems with the Giants. But for me personally, I think the best course of action for the Giants is, ride out this contract with Daniel Jones, and you got to go in a different direction with it. Because I really just don't believe that he is the guy. Tyrod Taylor has been operating the offense better. Now, if Daniel Jones steps back in there with how the defense has been playing with Barkley and the offensive line has actually been playing a little bit better, Justin Pugh's actually hasn't been bad coming off of the couch. And listen, if Daniel Jones goes out there and plays well, then this conversation doesn't mean anything. But I just really I don't see him coming back and the offense gets significantly better. So I think for me, like, going forward, I think you got to ride it out with Tyrod. And they might have to. Again, like, we don't know what the situation is with his neck injury. And this is the second time he's had a neck injury. It's a problem. And, you don't want to put this guy back in and he gets hurt, he gets really hurt. You don't want to see that. But, yeah, I think going forward, you got to leave Tyrod in. And obviously, I don't think they're going to do that. I think if Daniel Jones is healthy, they're going to put him back in. But, yeah, how the offense has been the last couple of weeks, it doesn't look good for Daniel Jones right now. But we'll see. For me, I think the Giants got to move off of him. And it's unfortunate because then it's like, well, now they don't have a quarterback. They're back to square one again. But, I don't know. They're connecting on long passes. Saquon's making plays. Waller's caught his touchdown. Listen, I'm not blaming Waller for, how he's gotten off to a slow start. I don't think it's on him. I think it's on how they're using him and, who's throwing him the ball. I really don't think it's on him, but again, I could be wrong. But yeah, that's what I think. It looks like Tyrod's going to start on Sunday again. And it's against a tough defense. They went up against the Bills, they went up against the Commanders, they got good defensive fronts. So now you're going up against the Jets, same thing. So, for me, I think it should be a competitive game. Especially because the Giants' defense has been playing better and Zach Wilson still just does not look good. They're getting by with, him at quarterback, but right now he still isn't playing. He hasn't had a big game yet. Well, the Chiefs game, I guess I'll give them that. But other than that, that's really it. So, and the Jets, they should have lost against the Eagles, but they made it. The Eagles, mistakes costed them in that game, and the Jets capitalized. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But, I'm looking forward to that game on Sunday. It's not often these two teams play each other. It's a Giants home game. Also, I really think, quick thing, those uniforms they wore on Sunday, I think those should be like their home uniforms going forward. They should. Obviously, I grew up with, with how they have been, like the regular blue jerseys with the, helmets and the NY on the helmet. But I really like those jerseys a lot that they wore on Sunday. So I hope, maybe at some point they make those the main jerseys going forward, but we'll see. But yeah, that's really my thoughts on the quarterback situation with the Giants. Let me know what you guys think with that. Obviously, like for me, I don't like saying like Daniel Jones is not the guy, like hoping that, he proves me wrong. But listen, I went into this year, very cautious because I'm like, listen, they're getting a lot of hype and everybody's talking about Daniel Jones possibly being a top 5 quarterback, and I don't see it. And so far, it's been the complete opposite of that. So, but yeah, so with that, we will take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to look at the stats leaders after Week 7. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're just going to go over the stats leaders after Week 7, as we normally do during the week. So let's go right into it. So for passing yards, Tua Tagovailoa currently is still the passing leader. He's got 2092 passing yards. Kirk Cousins has got 2057. Patrick Mahomes has emerged, and he is, after his great game on Sunday, he's got 2017. Matthew Stafford has 1908. Jared Goff has 1902. Yeah, I mean, listen, Tua's in like one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. I mean, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So, I mean, he's going to be up there. Kirk Cousins, I mean, with, not a very good running game. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot. And listen, you expect Mahomes to see him in some of these categories because he wasn't in passing yards. Now he jumped up there. And Stafford and Jared Goff, obviously two quarterbacks that were traded for each other. They're 4 and 5. But yeah, that's the passing yard leaders right there. Passer rating, Tua, still in first place. He's got a 110.4. Brock Purdy's got a 107.2. Lamar Jackson 101.9. Kirk Cousins 101.7. And Patrick Mahomes, once again, on the list, 101 on the dot. Yeah, I mean, listen, Brock Purdy's had a rough couple of games, but he's still top 5 in passer rating, and Tua is number 1 there, and so there was like some obviously on TV, people were talking about Tua like not being. Certain people were saying Tua wasn't an MVP candidate. I don't know how you can't put him in the conversation if that's true. I mean, passer rating, passing yards. I mean, look, is Tua? I don't look at Tua as like an elite quarterback. I look at him as he's a very good quarterback. He's been very solid this year. But I mean, it helps when you got Tyreek Hill, and listen, you still got to make the throws, and Tua does make the throws. Although last week or this past week against the Eagles, it wasn't good, but I mean, listen, he's been good. Tua's been good this year. And the other thing, too, is, like when he got hurt last year, I mean, the Dolphins were a different team. I mean, if he plays against the Bills in that playoff game last year, I'd probably win that game. So we could talk about, Tua, getting hurt, missing time, and, people, criticizing him. But, when he doesn't play, I mean, the Dolphins need him. He's their best chance to win. And when he's not there, it's a problem. So he's been good this year. Dolphins have been good, although obviously you're a little concerned with how, they've played against good teams on the road. But listen, I think he's an MVP candidate. And I think Brock Purdy still is, although last couple weeks he's definitely taken a hit there. Lamar Jackson in passer rating in the top 3. I mean, that just goes to show you he's been better as a thrower. He's definitely gotten better, and it's nice when he actually has some guys to throw to. I talked about yesterday, Zay Flowers emerging as a nice player for them, their rookie wide receiver. So, But, yeah, those are the passer rating leaders. Rushing yards, you got Christian McCaffrey, obviously, in first place. Zach Moss is still second, which it's just funny. This is like such a weird list. Christian McCaffrey, then you got Zach Moss, DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne, Raheem Mostert. Really Zach Moss being in second is weird to me. Travis Etienne, though, he's really emerged as one of the best running backs in the NFL. I mean, last week, he didn't do much after his 2 touchdowns, but he really has looked really good for the Jags. And listen, this is after missing like his first season. And it was honestly better off just because of how a train wreck, the Jags were that year. But he's really looked good this year. So, and the Jags are starting to get right. So that's that's good for them. Obviously, you got DeAndre Swift, who's run the football well for the Eagles. Mostert, didn't have a very good game against the Eagles, which was kind of expected. Eagles are good against the run, but he's number 5 there. Then we go to receiving yards. Tyreek Hill is at 902. A.J. Brown is at 809. Puka Nacua is at 752. Stephon Diggs, 678. And DJ Moore, 636. Listen, Tyreek Hill, we're at the we're pretty much at the halfway point of the season. He's going to get very close to 2,000 yards. And for me personally, I'm so happy with fantasy because, like, I had 4. I didn't know who I was going to pick. And I was like, you know what? Let's take Tyreek Hill. I shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with that. And that really has paid off this year in multiple leagues. And A.J. Brown's really started to get it going. Another good game on Sunday. Again, it all goes back to that Week 3 argument on the sidelines, with not getting the ball. I mean, he's gotten the ball a lot. And, he's made the most of it. Puka Nacua, is still in the top 5. Obviously had a good game against the Steelers. Cooper Kupp actually, surprisingly still, got held to 2 receptions for 29 yards. That was really surprising. But, the Steelers did a good job holding him down. But, Nacua, is at 752. He had another good game against the Steelers. Diggs, obviously, is in the top 5. That's expected. DJ Moore, I feel like, is going to dip out of the top 5 at some point just because, I don't know when Fields is coming back. And, the Bears, the Bears are going to have to throw it a lot on Sunday, because they're going to have to keep up with the Chargers. They were playing ahead, against the Raiders for the most part. Pretty much the whole game. And, the Chargers, listen, they're coming off of a few bad losses in a row. And that's a high-powered offense, and, they're going to have to throw it more. So DJ Moore should, be heavily involved on Sunday. And then we look at the sacks leaders. So you got Danielle Hunter, he's at 9. TJ Watt, 8. Myles Garrett, 7.5. Trey Hendrickson, 7. Khalil Mack, 7. And Danielle Hunter, listen, he was a guy that maybe the Vikings were going to move off of, with all the trade rumors going on. But now the Vikings have put together a good couple of weeks, and he might be sticking around. So, and then, of course, TJ Watt's a monster. He had a pick the other day. He's at 8. Myles Garrett, 7.5. Obviously, Khalil Mack had his 6 of his 7 sacks in one game. But, yeah. Then we look at the interception leaders. You got Geno Stone for the Ravens. He's got 4. Bland for the Cowboys has got 3. Cisco 3 for the two Jacksonville Jaguars are tied for second with interceptions at 3. Nelson's got 3 for the Texans. So that's really it though with interceptions though. One guy has 4, everybody else has got 3. Zaire Franklin, he's still the leading tackler. He's got 88 for the Colts. And then we go to the so that's the player stats. Let's go to the team leaders now. So the Dolphins, obviously, leading in passing yards. In rushing, they still are averaging 100. Are at the top, averaging 162.3 rushing yards per game. The Browns are in second, Ravens in third, Eagles in fourth, Bears in fifth. In receiving yards, the Dolphins lead the way there. The Vikings are in second. The Chiefs are in third. Texans fourth. Chargers fifth. No surprise there, really. Dolphins lead the way in scoring. You got the 49ers in second. Bills in third. Eagles in fourth. Cowboys in fifth. It's just crazy how the Dolphins lead, all these offensive categories. Total offense, another statistic that they lead in. The Chiefs are behind them. They're averaging 396.7. And, these two teams are going to play each other in Germany in a couple weeks, so that's going to be a lot of fun. The Eagles are in third, Lions fourth, Bills fifth. And then the Ravens lead the way in sacks. They got 29. Niners have a total of 11 interceptions. They lead the way there. That's pretty much it with the stat leaders there. Listen, the Dolphins, they lead all these categories, but people still have their criticisms, obviously. Because especially, with how they've played against good teams on the road. They lost against the Eagles, who are a Super Bowl contender, and they lost against the Bills. Now, the Bills look like a different team right now. I I think they're going to figure it out at some point. I would think. You would think. Well, some people might not think. They might just say, like, the Bills are done. But, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they figure it out. But the Dolphins, I mean, listen, they're going to be a team that nobody's going to want to face because that offense is really good. It's really dangerous. They want to have home field advantage. That's the big thing. That's a big thing for a lot of these teams is they're going to want to get home field. It's going to be very important because, we talked about it. A lot of these teams are beatable. All of these teams are beatable. Everybody has had that one bad loss. So that's what's going to make home field advantage, important. So, but yeah, I mean, those are the stats leaders. Dolphins still lead every offensive category, pretty much. So, now they play the Patriots at home. Which, listen, the Patriots are coming off of a win against the Bills, but listen, now they're in Miami, and I think they're going to have some problems there. I think Miami's going to, this is a get-right game for them, and, I think they should win this game by at least 2 scores. But judging off of how my predictions have been the last couple of weeks, who knows? I mean, probably not going to. You're probably going to have to say, well, then that means if you're saying that, then that means the Patriots are probably going to do well in this game. I don't know. My predictions have been bad recently. And then last night, once again, took the Phillies to win, and they, of course, lost. And now so we got a World Series matchup that we will preview. Well, we're not going to preview, but, it'll already be in progress. But, we'll give updates on it on the GSMC Baseball podcast. That'll be on Friday after the football podcast. Big Friday. Got the World Series going. Football, obviously. Football Friday will be doing the picks. And, and the NBA's back. So I was watching those 2 games last night, Nuggets and Lakers. Nuggets picking up right where they left off and, the defending champs. And then, of course, the Suns and the Warriors. Kevin Durant making his return to Golden State for the first time since he left. Because we've had in front of fans, because we've had a lot going on, pandemic and, him being injured and things like that. But, yeah, so the sports equinox is upon us. We got all 4 main sports going on at the same time. And, it's enjoy it because it's not that often that we get that. Because baseball is going to be over soon. And then, then it's just the 3 other ones. And then, eventually football is going to end. And then you got just basketball and hockey until we get baseball back. So it's a cycle. So, but that's pretty much it for today's show. Once again, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to, obviously for future live streams, to get your comments recognized, go to the link. It's obviously on the ticker as well, streamelements.com/GSMC sportsnetwork./tip. That's for future reference. And then obviously, right after this, I'll be recording the Patreon. So, to see all the Patreons, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all of the bonus content that you wouldn't find here on this live show. So, again, I thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to go record the Patreon now. So that is all the time that we got for today. I thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so make sure to tune in for that. And until then, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.